Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Gary Busey? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case. I'll move to the timeline of the alleged crimes, then offer my analysis. William Gary Busey was born in Goose Creek, Texas on June 29, 1944. He goes by the name Gary. His father was a construction design manager, and his mother was a homemaker. At some point, Gary moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. He graduated from high school there before attending a community college in Kansas. Eventually, Gary attended Pittsburgh State University in Pittsburgh, Kansas. He had a scholarship there to play football. Gary became interested in music. After injuring his knee, he transferred to Oklahoma State University and studied theater, but did not complete his degree. Gary claimed that he was only one credit away from graduating when he dropped out. As a side note, I find this very difficult to believe. Over the years, I have found that people sometimes try to explain not completing a degree program by making it seem as though they were very close to completing it and something went wrong. So essentially they're saying that they have the qualifications of somebody who graduated but didn't technically graduate. A few examples of stories I've heard: a person didn't get their bachelor's degree because they were absent from the last day of their last class. A student failed to get her master's degree because she forgot to put her name on her last assignment. And my personal favorite, a man was not conferred his PhD because his professor was fired before submitting final grades. Like the college would really say to the guy, "We appreciate that you attended classes here and thank you for thousands of dollars in tuition, but we fired your professor. Therefore, there is no possible way we can figure out what your grade would have been. It will be a mystery forever. Tough break." As far as retaking the class, for some magical reason, that can't happen either. Moving back to Gary's background, Gary played in a couple of bands but did not find success. He thought he would give acting a try as a way to pay the bills. He did much better with acting than he had done with music. From 1967 through 1973, Gary obtained several small roles in movies and television. In 1974, he was given a supporting role that really helped his career. It was in the movie Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, which starred Clint Eastwood and Jeff Bridges. In 1975, Gary appeared in episode number 633 of the popular series Gunsmoke. His character was the last person killed on the series. Gary appeared in a remake of the movie A Star is Born in 1976. In 1978, he played Buddy Holly in the movie The Buddy Holly Story. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor. Gary continued to find work in Hollywood during the 1980s, with roles in movies like DC Cab, The Bear, and Silver Bullet. In 1987, he appeared in the movie Lethal Weapon with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. Gary was severely injured in a motorcycle collision on December 4, 1988. He was driving in Los Angeles at around 11:40 p.m. Gary was not wearing a helmet, and he was traveling about 45 miles per hour. He hit a patch of sand and gravel on the road and flew over the handlebars. The back of his head hit the curb, and he sustained a skull fracture and permanent brain damage. Gary recovered from his injuries in many ways, like he regained many physical capabilities, but mentally he was not quite the same. In the 1990s, Gary had roles in several movies, including Predator 2, Point Break, Under Siege, The Firm, Drop Zone, Rookie of the Year, Soldier, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. In 1995, Gary was arrested after the police searched his home in Malibu, California. He was charged with being under the influence of cocaine and with a number of possession charges, including for marijuana, hallucinogenic mushrooms, and cocaine. Gary overdosed on cocaine at this time. In 1997, Gary allegedly struck a flight attendant after she accidentally bumped into him. This same year, he had surgery for a cancerous tumor in his sinus cavity. The surgery left his face with a lopsided appearance. In 1999, Gary was arrested after allegedly grabbing his then-wife on her shoulders and pushing her to the ground. Gary's career lost quite a bit of momentum around this time. He had a reputation of being difficult to work with. During one incident, when working on a movie, he allegedly kicked a co-star in the stomach. Even though his career slowed down, Gary did continue to work. He voiced a character in a couple of the Grand Theft Auto video games. He starred in a short-lived reality show on Comedy Central called I'm with Busey. Gary appeared in 2 seasons of Celebrity Apprentice. In 2011, a female employee of the show accused him of making inappropriate contact with her. Gary filed bankruptcy in 2012. He had debts of almost $1 million. Gary was on the series Dancing with the Stars in 2015. In 2019, he starred in an off-Broadway musical titled Only Human, in which he played the role of God. In May of 2020, Gary appeared on a show titled Gary Busey Pet Judge, where he functions as a judge who presides over disputes regarding pets. It's like a fake reality show. The people on the show are not really litigating in court. Rather, they consider themselves to be actors. At the time making this video, Gary Busey remains active. For example, he's on Cameo, where he offers short personalized videos for $395. Now moving to the timeline of the alleged crimes. From August 12 to August 14, 2022, Gary was scheduled to attend an annual horror film and memorabilia fan convention called Monster Mania Con, which was held in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I guess the people running the convention invited Gary because they thought simply having the convention in New Jersey wasn't scary enough. I would have to disagree. According to the police, during a photo shoot at the convention on August 13, Gary engaged in some illegal behavior. 2 women claimed that Gary touched them on the buttocks. One woman said that Gary put his face near her breast and attempted to undo her bra. He inquired as to where she obtained her breasts. The police also received a call from a man who said his daughter had been touched by Gary. The convention removed Gary from the site and informed him that returning was not an option. Gary allegedly asked the police to apologize to the victims on his behalf and to convince them not to file any charges against him. He then said it was possible that he accidentally touched people on a certain body part. On August 19, 2022, Gary was arrested and charged with 2 counts of 4th-degree criminal sexual contact, 1 count of attempting that same charge, and 1 count of harassment. Gary returned to Malibu, where he was captured on video sitting on a bench in Point Dume Park. It appears as though he lowered his pants about 8 inches or so and put his left hand in the uncovered area. When he was done doing whatever that was, he smoked a cigar. To be fair, Jeffrey Toobin just left CNN not long before this. Perhaps Gary was auditioning for his spot. A reporter caught up with Gary at a gas station and asked him about the incident in New Jersey. Gary Busey denied the allegations, saying, "I have no regrets, nothing happened." Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Gary has made a good living in Hollywood, mostly through supporting roles, character acting, and guest appearances. Many of the productions he has been involved with would be considered low quality. That's being quite generous. I think he can definitely be considered well known, but that's different than being sought after. Prior to his motorcycle collision, Gary was already thought of as quirky and excitable. After the collision, he became much more interactive with other people, not always in a good way. His son said that after his father's motorcycle collision, Gary was left struggling with delusions, severe mood swings, and a volatile temper. His personality churned up to an 11. I guess he's trying to say that his father is more impulsive, reactive, and outgoing, like he doesn't have a good filter. This is consistent with what a mental health professional said after Gary was on Celebrity Rehab in 2008. The clinician indicated that Gary's brain injury caused him to be more impulsive in both his thoughts and his behavior. His executive capabilities were massively restricted, and Gary is not always able to act in an appropriate manner. Item number 2. The kind of work Gary receives now is much different than what he received in his early career. Despite the brain injury in 1988, Gary still managed to appear in a string of popular movies in the 1990s. Since then, however, many of his appearances tend to emphasize the fact that Gary is unusual and lacks good decision-making skills. For example, he had a guest appearance on The Simpsons where he played himself as someone who violated boundaries, like the role he was playing was purposely designed to make fun of himself. Gary is known for an intense smile that some people have characterized as unnerving, and for making statements that are ill-advised. One could argue that he adapted to the consequences of his brain injury, like he is taking roles that fit with his presentation and the public perception of him. Another way to look at it is he's being treated differently because of his impulsivity, and he's taking any work that he can get. The only roles available to him are unbalanced and unpredictable characters. Item number 3. It seems clear that the motorcycle collision is a defining moment in Gary's life and career. It changed him drastically. He was a promising actor and was unable to live up to the expectations. Fortunately for Gary, he was able to avoid obscurity, but remaining somewhat popular comes at a cost. It means that he is expected to interact with the public. I think this is one of the reasons he continues to get in trouble, like the alleged incident at the convention in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I think that if Gary's going to continue to interact with the public, he needs to have somebody with him to help him stay within bounds. It's a little worrisome that he was arrested and then he had that unusual behavior on the park bench. It's almost like Gary is even more impulsive. He doesn't seem to be appreciating the consequences of his behavior. Item number 4. Gary has a number of views on mysticism and spiritual elements which appeared to become more pronounced after his collision. According to Gary, he died on the operating table. He went to heaven and saw angels which looked like big balls of light that float and carried nothing but warmth and love. He was surrounded by trust, love, protection, and happiness like one cannot feel on earth. Gary's journey to heaven abruptly terminated when the physicians revived him. Gary said that in 2014, Patrick Swayze visited him as a ghost, which makes sense considering Patrick Swayze practiced that role when he was alive. I bet when Gary was done spending time with Patrick, he felt as though he had the time of his life. There was an incident on the set of the 2003 movie Quigley, which may speak to Gary's state of mind. In this movie, Gary played a jaded CEO who died in a motor vehicle collision. To atone for his sins, he was reincarnated as a white Pomeranian, like the dog. Accordingly, one of the movie sets was designed to look like heaven. When Gary arrived on set, he said he could not play the scene. He had been to heaven, and it didn't look like the set. Gary said, "That sofa's all wrong, that mirror is ridiculous, they don't even have mirrors." I guess that makes sense. If heaven did have mirrors, people would just stand in front of them all the time, saying things like, "Do these wings make me look fat?" What I find interesting about the story is that the most unrealistic part of the movie, from Gary's point of view, was the set design, not the part about being reincarnated as a Pomeranian. Now moving to my final thoughts. Gary made a number of questionable decisions in his life, riding a motorcycle without a helmet, using cocaine, visiting New Jersey. The list goes on and on. The motorcycle collision amplified the worst parts of Gary's personality. Now he was more likely to make an increased number of bad decisions, which he did, repeatedly. Each one limited his promising career even more, until the actor that he is now is almost unrecognizable when compared to the actor he was in the late 1970s and 1980s. Gary Busey's life is a chilling reminder as to the true cost of poor decisions. These decisions are not restricted to a one-time fee. Rather, the debt accrues interest that places the debtor under siege, reaching a breaking point where even a silver bullet cannot vanquish the predator. Those are my thoughts in the case of Gary Busey. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be as intriguing as a remorseful billionaire Pomeranian who does not like decorating with mirrors. Thanks for watching.